The house had always been quiet, but not in a lonely way. It held the kind of quiet that wrapped itself around your shoulders like a worn blanket, gentle, familiar, safe. That was especially true after Zariah's mother passed away. She had been just 11 then, too young to understand what death truly meant, but just old enough to know that something in her world had broken beyond repair. Her father, Mr. Bennett, stepped into the space her mother left behind with quiet determination. He wasn't the kind of man who showed emotion through grand gestures, but he braided her hair with trembling fingers every morning before school, cooked her favorite rice and beans on weekends even though he hated the smell of burnt onions, and read to her every night without fail from old storybooks with covers held together by tape and love. "We're going to be just fine, Z," he would whisper, brushing her curls behind her ear, and somehow she believed him. Their bond was like wood and fire, solid and warm. They didn't need many words. A glance across the room or a light squeeze of her hand was enough to say, "I'm here. I got you. I'm proud of you, Zariah." That's what Mr. Bennett said when she handed him her high school diploma, tears in his eyes. "Your mama would have been proud, too." Zariah smiled, swallowing the ache rising in her chest. "I miss her," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "Every day, sweetheart. But we've got each other." That was their quiet oath. She stayed home when she could have left for college farther away, enrolled at a nearby university instead, and got a part-time job tutoring younger kids to help out. She never asked for much, and Mr. Bennett never let her go without. Just the two of them against the world. Then Clarice arrived. Zariah was 19, in her second year of university, when her father met Clarice at a conference dinner. Within 6 months, they were married. At first, Clarice was everything a new wife and stepmother should be: gracious, kind, a little too bubbly, but charming enough to win over everyone around her. She even had a daughter, Alani, around Zariah's age, and for a while it felt like their tight little family of two was expanding into something new and wonderful. Spa days, shopping trips, Sunday brunch with too much syrup and laughter. "We're a family now," Clarice would say with a dazzling smile. "3 beautiful women and 1 very lucky man." Zariah tried to believe it. She even called Clarice Rissy sometimes, but there was a feeling, a soft unease beneath all the laughter, a smile that didn't quite touch the eyes, a compliment that felt too polished. Then things shifted slowly at first. Clarice stopped inviting Zariah to girls-only outings with Alani. She began locking her bedroom door at night, whispering to Alani when they thought no one was listening. At the dinner table, Zariah's contributions were ignored or dismissed, like she was a guest overstaying her welcome. Still, she told herself not to overreact. Maybe it was just growing pains. Maybe she was imagining things, until the night she overheard Clarice on the phone. "She's too comfortable here. She needs to get a job and move out. She clings to Mr. Bennett like a leech." The words pierced Zariah like cold metal. She stood in the hallway, back pressed to the wall, breath caught in her throat. She couldn't move, couldn't blink, just listened as everything she feared was confirmed. Later that night, she knocked gently on her father's study door. He looked up from his paperwork, eyes lighting up. "Something on your mind, Z?" She sat across from him, fingers twisting nervously in her lap. "Do you think I'm overstaying my welcome?" His brow furrowed, pen falling to the desk. "Where's this coming from?" "It's just Clarice. I don't think she's very happy with me around anymore." Mr. Bennett leaned forward, folding his hands. "This is your home. I love Clarice, but I will never turn my back on you. If something's bothering you, come to me. Always. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Thanks, Dad. I needed to hear that. From that moment on, Zariah adjusted. She didn't confront Clarice. She didn't cry or complain. She simply adapted. She was polite but distant, present but emotionally guarded. She stopped sharing things about her day, kept her door locked, ate on her own schedule. It wasn't peace, but it was manageable. The cracks became more obvious. Clarice would sigh loudly when Zariah entered a room, like her presence was a burden. At meals, there were only enough portions for 3 unless Mr. Bennet specifically asked for Zariah to be included. "Oh, I didn't know she was eating with us," Clarice would say, feigning innocence. "She didn't tell me." Alani followed her mother's lead eye rolls, curt responses, laughter when Clarice made subtle digs at Zariah. Mr. Bennet noticed. One evening, after a particularly quiet dinner, he sat beside Zariah in the den. "She's trying to push you out," he said, voice low. Zariah looked up, startled. "You see it too?" "I see everything, baby girl. I just hoped she'd come around, that she'd grow to love you in time." Zariah exhaled slowly, leaning her head against his shoulder. "She doesn't even try anymore." Mr. Bennet wrapped his arm around her. "You've been patient, more patient than most would be. I'm proud of how you've handled this." His quiet strength became her anchor again, but Clarice didn't give up. She shifted tactics, started planting seeds of doubt, telling Mr. Bennet that Zariah was becoming ungrateful, lazy, that she slammed the door in Alani's face or forgot her chores. "I'll talk to her," he would say each time, but instead of accusations, he would simply ask, "What happened?" And Zariah always answered, calm and steady, "That's not true. Here's what actually happened." And every time he believed her, not blindly, but because she had never lied to him. "I don't know what her goal is," Zariah said one night, curled up on the porch swing. "But it's not love. She doesn't want a family. She wants control." Mr. Bennet looked tired. "Then she's in for a rude awakening." Zariah started watching Clarice more carefully, the way she always smiled when Mr. Bennet was nearby, the way her tone changed the moment he walked away. Compliments that felt like traps, questions that sounded like tests. She was careful, cautious, until the week before Mr. Bennet's 70th birthday. Clarice was suddenly radiant, baking, singing, offering to help Zariah pick out a dress. "I want everything to be perfect," she said sweetly. "He deserves it." Zariah raised an eyebrow but said nothing. That night, the house was filled with music, laughter, and golden light. Mr. Bennet beamed in his navy suit, surrounded by neighbors and friends. "Z," he said, eyes glassy, "you've stood by me through everything. I don't say it enough, I love you." "I love you too, Dad. Happy birthday." Moments later, Clarice approached, smile wide and eyes gleaming. She handed Zariah a glass of red wine. "To your father's health," she said. "Let's toast." Zariah took it with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks, Clarice." But as soon as Clarice turned away, Zariah walked over to where Alani sat scrolling on her phone. "You want this?" "I'm not in the mood." Alani shrugged. "Sure." She downed the wine in one go. It didn't take long. 15 minutes, maybe 20. Then chaos. Alani gasped, clutching her stomach, face contorted in pain. What is this?" she screamed, collapsing to her knees. Guests froze. Mr. Bennet rushed forward. "Alani! Alani! Somebody call an ambulance." Clarice screamed too, but Zariah noticed something strange. Her panic was too polished, too slow, like it caught her off guard, like the plan had gone wrong. Zariah stood frozen, heart racing. She knew. She didn't need a test result. She already knew. The hospital waiting room was cold in a way that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Zariah sat perfectly still, staring at the same spot on the tiled floor, replaying the moment Alani collapsed over and over again in her mind. The sound of her scream, the way her phone hit the ground, the way Mr. Bennett's face twisted in horror as he cradled her limp body. Clarice had been there too, holding her own face like it would crumble under her fingers, gasping and crying. But there had been no tremble in her hands, no confusion in her eyes, only calculation. The nurse came out with clipped shoes and a clipboard. "She's stable," she said, her voice flat from repetition. "It was some kind of toxin. We've done a stomach pump and blood work. She'll be okay." Mr. Bennett exhaled like he had been holding his breath for an entire hour. "Can I see her?" The nurse nodded. "Just one at a time." He turned to Zariah first, then Clarice. "I'll go." Zariah watched her father disappear behind the white curtain, his back slightly more hunched than it had been that morning. Clarice stood beside her, arms crossed. She didn't speak. Zariah didn't either. There were no words left between them that weren't poisoned by suspicion. When Mr. Bennett returned an hour later, his face was pale. He sat beside Zariah and spoke in a voice so quiet it could barely be heard above the hum of vending machines. "The doctor said it was in her drink." Zariah blinked once. "I know." He looked at her then, not angry, just broken. "Where did that glass come from?" She didn't hesitate. "Clarice gave it to me. She brought it to me during the party, told me to toast with her." Mr. Bennett turned slowly to his wife. "Is that true?" Clarice looked at both of them, her lips parted. "That's a lie. Why would I hurt my own daughter?" "That's what I'd like to know," he said, his voice tight. "You've never handed Zariah a drink before, not once in 5 years. Why now? Why tonight?" Clarice said nothing. Her silence was a sentence in itself. Zariah stood, her voice low but unflinching. "You've been trying to get rid of me for years. You made me out to be lazy, selfish, a burden. You isolated me, manipulated him, and when none of it worked, you tried to eliminate me." Clarice's jaw tightened. "You've always resented me. From the moment I walked into this house, you've never accepted me, and you poisoned everything with your little smirks and silence. Don't act like a victim now." Mr. Bennett slammed his hand against the chair armrest, the sound echoing through the quiet waiting room. "Enough!" His voice cracked, not from rage but from grief. "She has never once disrespected you. Not once. She stayed out of your way. She never yelled, never accused. And now my granddaughter is in a hospital bed, fighting for her life because of a drink that was meant for Zariah. Don't stand there and rewrite history." Clarice stared at him, stunned. "So that's it. You believe her over me?" "No," he said, standing. "I believe what I saw, and what I didn't want to admit until tonight." He turned to Zariah. "Go home, sweetheart. I'll deal with this." Zariah hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yes, you've been through enough." That night, Mr. Bennett returned to the house with Clarice trailing behind like a ghost. He didn't say much. He didn't yell. He simply pulled out the suitcase she had used when she first moved in and began folding her clothes with methodical, devastating calm. "I won't punish Alani for your choices," he said, not looking at Clarice. "But I won't let her stay in this house either. You nearly killed someone. I want both of you gone by morning. The driver will take you wherever you want. I'll refund anything you contributed to this house, but you're leaving." Clarice didn't speak, not one word. When the car came the next morning, Zariah stood at the top of the staircase and watched silently. Clarice looked different. Her hair was pulled back tight, her eyes ringed with darkness. Alani was pale, her steps slow, her hand still pressed to her stomach. Neither of them looked up at the house. Mr. Bennett stood at the door and didn't move. "The driver knows where to take you," he said quietly. "I'll send someone for the rest of your things." Clarice opened her mouth as if to speak, but he lifted one hand. "Don't. I gave you my heart. I gave you a family. And you repaid me with silence, poison, and betrayal. You don't get the last word here." Alani paused before getting into the car, her eyes flicking up to where Zariah stood. She looked like she wanted to say something, but instead she stepped inside and the door closed behind her. Mr. Bennett didn't turn away until the car had fully disappeared from view. Then he closed the door, locked it, and stood in the foyer with his eyes shut. "It's over," he said softly, like he was trying to convince himself. Zariah walked down the steps slowly. "Are you okay?" He nodded, then shook his head. "I feel like I've been sleepwalking for 5 years." She put a hand on his arm. "You always believe the best in people. That's not a flaw. It almost cost me my daughter." She squeezed his hand gently, but it didn't. They sat in the living room for a long time without speaking. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. Inside, for the first time in years, the air felt clean. Light filtered through the windows without casting any shadows. And though they both had wounds that would take time to heal, they knew they were still standing, still together, still family. The house was quiet again, but this time it was the good kind of quiet. The house felt like it could finally breathe. No more locked doors, no more footsteps muffled by tension, no more eyes watching from behind half-closed blinds, just stillness. Real, restful stillness. In the mornings, Zariah would wake to the smell of cinnamon pancakes or Mr. Bennett's infamous burnt toast. He hummed now when he cooked. It wasn't much of a tune, just a quiet rhythm under his breath, but it was more music than the house had heard in years. One Saturday morning, as they painted the guest room a soft, dusty blue, he paused mid-stroke and said, "You know, I used to dread coming home." Zariah looked over, the paintbrush still in her hand. "Really?" He nodded slowly, dipping the brush into the tray. "Isn't that awful? My own house didn't feel like mine anymore. I used to sit in the car for 10, 15 minutes just trying to convince myself to walk through that front door." Zariah's heart clenched. "I used to stay late at the library for the same reason. Pretended I had assignments due, but really, I just didn't want to cross paths with her." He set down the brush and wiped his hands. "I'm sorry, Z. I should have seen it sooner. I should have ended it before it came to this." She turned to him, her voice soft but sure. "You didn't choose her over me, not when it mattered. You saw through her in the end. That's what counts." He reached over, taking her hand. "You've always been strong, stronger than I ever gave you credit for. You were respectful even when she didn't deserve it. You kept this house from falling apart long before I did." Zariah blinked against the sudden sting in her eyes. "Because you're my dad, and this house, it's always been ours." The days passed slowly, gently. Saturday walks in the neighborhood park returned. They cooked together, ate on the back patio under fairy lights, dug out old photo albums, and laughed over crooked baby teeth and birthday party disasters. For the first time in years, Mr. Bennet began to sleep through the night. Zariah, too. The bad dreams faded into memory. Until one evening, the past knocked softly on their quiet little world. It came in the form of a text from an old neighbor. Alani wanted to talk. She had reached out through someone else still too ashamed, perhaps, to contact Zariah directly. But the message was clear. She just wants to hear the truth from you. One time, no drama, no Clarice. Zariah sat on the porch swing, phone in hand, staring at the screen. Mr. Bennet watched her from across the yard where he was trimming hedges. "You gonna meet her?" he asked finally. Zariah didn't answer right away. "I don't know what she wants from me," she said quietly. "Closure? Clarity? Or maybe she wants to tell me I ruined her life." "Or maybe," Mr. Bennet said, wiping his hands on a towel, "she just wants to know how you survived what she didn't see." Zariah nodded slowly. "I'm not going alone." "I'll be nearby," he said without hesitation. They met at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. Not the kind of place either of them had ever gone before. Neutral ground. Alani was already seated when Zariah walked in. She looked smaller. Not physically, but something in her posture, her face. Her makeup was minimal, her clothes simple. No flashy earrings, no designer purse, just a girl with hollow eyes and trembling fingers. "Thanks for coming," Alani said softly. Zariah slid into the seat across from her. She didn't say anything at first, just studied the girl who once laughed at her behind closed doors. "What do you want, Alani?" Alani looked down at her cup of untouched coffee. "I don't remember much from that night. Just burning, screaming, my stomach twisting like someone lit a fire in it." Her voice cracked. "They said I almost died." "You did," Zariah said evenly, "and you weren't even the one she was aiming for." Alani's head snapped up. Her eyes were glassy. "I know. I didn't want to believe it. I kept thinking no, not my mom. She wouldn't. But then I started looking back at everything. The way she talked about you. The things she said to me about you. The little games she played. I see it now. All of it." Zariah didn't flinch. "I never wanted to hurt you, Alani. I didn't hate you. But you never once stood up for me. You laughed when she humiliated me. You rolled your eyes when I tried to speak." Alani swallowed, tears spilling over. "I know, and I'm sorry. I was so caught up in being her favorite. I thought you were cold, distant. I didn't see what she was doing to you." Zariah's voice dropped. "I still hear your screams sometimes, at night." Alani pressed a napkin to her eyes. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just needed to tell you. I believe you. I believe everything now. And I'm leaving her. I can't go back to that apartment. I can't look at her the same way. She's not who I thought she was." Zariah looked away, blinking fast. "You survived. That's what matters. What you do with that second chance is up to you." They sat in silence for a few moments. Two girls, not enemies, not friends. Just two survivors breathing the same uncertain air. When they parted, there were no hugs, no promises, just a nod, a look, a quiet understanding that they would never go back to what they once were. And maybe that was okay. Zariah stepped out into the sun where Mr. Bennet waited by the car. He opened the door without a word. As they drove home, the silence between them was comfortable. "How did it go?" he asked eventually. "Hard," she said, "but necessary." That night, Zaria stood by her bedroom window, the sky dark above, the porch light casting a soft halo below. She had faced the ghosts, heard the apology she thought she'd never get. And though it didn't erase the pain, it did something almost better. It closed the door, not with anger, not with bitterness, just with clarity and peace. The morning sun poured gently through the kitchen windows, casting golden squares across the tiled floor as Zariah stood barefoot by the sink, rinsing out her tea mug. The house felt different now, lighter, as if every wall had exhaled and let go of something it had been holding on to for too long. The shadows that used to cling to corners, the tension that had lingered like smoke after a fire, were gone. She could breathe. Mr. Bennet sat at the kitchen table reading the newspaper, glasses perched low on his nose, occasionally grumbling under his breath at the crossword puzzle. "5-letter word for stubborn," he muttered. "Starts with Z." Zariah smirked. "Very funny, Dad." He peeked at her over the paper with a grin. "Got you smiling, didn't I?" She poured herself another cup of tea and sat down across from him. "You've been happier lately." "And you haven't?" He raised an eyebrow. She nodded slowly. "It's just strange to not feel like I'm constantly preparing for something bad. I used to keep my keys in my pocket even inside the house, just in case." Mr. Bennet put down his paper. "You're safe now. This is your home, and no one's going to take that from you again." She looked at him for a long moment, then placed her hand over his. "I believe that." They spent their weekends planting a small herb garden out back. Mr. Bennet talked to the basil like it was a baby, and Zariah teased him mercilessly for it. They painted the front door a cheerful red, reorganized the bookshelves, cooked meals without having to measure their words. It wasn't about grand changes. It was the little things, the 2 mugs always clean on the counter, the fresh flowers in the hallway, the lightness in their conversations that slowly stitched something whole again. One Friday evening, Zariah came home holding a white envelope and a quiet smile. She placed it on the kitchen table where her father was stirring a pot of stew. "What's this?" he asked. "My first paycheck," she said, "from the design firm." He opened it slowly, then looked at her, startled. "Z, this is real money. You don't have to give this to me." She shook her head. "I want to. I want to help. You've carried everything for years. It's my turn to carry something too." He stared at the check, then at her. "I don't need your money. I just need you to be happy." "I am," she said softly, "because I still have you. That's all I need." That night, after dinner, they sat on the porch swing under a sky smeared with violet and gold. The wind rustled the trees and carried the scent of cut grass and jasmine. Mr. Bennet sipped from his chipped mug and glanced at her. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you drank that wine?" Zariah's fingers tightened around her own cup. "Every day," she said, "but something inside me warned me. Something about her smile didn't feel right. I trusted my gut." He nodded. "That instinct saved your life." She turned to him, her eyes steady. "It saved yours, too." They sat in silence, letting the dusk settle around them like a blanket. The sound of distant laughter from a neighbor's house drifted in, and for once it didn't feel like something she was missing. It felt like background music to the calm she had earned. Later that week, they visited her mother's grave. It had been a long time. Too long. Mr. Bennet brought sunflowers, her favorite, and Zariah brought the storybook he used to read from every night when she was a child. They knelt by the headstone, said nothing at first, and then Zariah whispered, "She would have been proud of us." Mr. Bennet's voice broke a little. "I hope so." "She would," Zariah said again, firmer. "You raised me on your own. You never gave up on me, even when someone else tried to erase me from your life. You protected me when it mattered most. That's what makes a good man." His eyes shimmered as he nodded. "And you? You never gave in to hate. You walked through fire and came out stronger, kinder. You remind me of her every day." They sat for a long time in that quiet cemetery, not in grief but in remembrance, like two souls telling another that the fight was over and peace had finally come home. One afternoon, as fall crept in, the leaves outside their house began to turn. Golds, reds, and crisp amber fluttered down the front yard. Zariah stood on the porch sipping spiced tea while watching Mr. Bennet chase a squirrel away from the bird feeder. "Some things never change," she called out, laughing. He turned, grinning. "You better believe it." That night, as they played cards in the living room, the record player hummed softly with a jazz tune from decades past. Mr. Bennet looked at her, his eyes full of something deeper than relief. "I used to think healing meant forgetting, but now I think it just means surviving together." She nodded. "And choosing not to let the pain become our identity." They were still healing. There were still nights where Zariah would wake up sweating, the phantom scream echoing in her ears. Still moments when Mr. Bennet would stop mid-sentence, eyes going distant, replaying all the ways he wished he'd acted sooner. But those moments passed faster now. They talked through them, held space for each other, made room for new memories. One crisp Sunday morning, Mr. Bennet stepped onto the porch in his favorite sweater and called back into the house, "We're going for a walk. Come on." Zariah laughed, grabbed her scarf, and joined him. As they walked past houses lined with pumpkins and wreaths, a few neighbors waved. Children rode bikes and dogs barked, and the world kept spinning. "We're still here," he said quietly as they strolled side by side. "Still standing." She smiled, looking up at the autumn sky. "Stronger than before." And in that simple truth, under falling leaves and fading memories, Zariah knew that the storm had passed. The home they rebuilt was not just 4 walls and a roof. It was every step they had taken back to each other, every tear shed in silence, every truth finally spoken. And now, in the stillness they had earned, they could finally begin again.